The doll's gaze. I never believed in the supernatural, but that was before I found the doll. I was visiting an old thrift store on the outskirts of town, looking for unique trinkets for my collection. The store was musty and cluttered, the kind of place where time seemed to stand still. As I browsed the aisles, my eyes fell upon a peculiar doll sitting on a dusty shelf. Its porcelain face was remarkably detailed, with rosy cheeks and delicate lashes, but it was the eyes that caught my attention. They were unnaturally large, almost too lifelike, with a deep, dark brown color that seemed to pierce right through me. I couldn't look away, feeling an eerie pull towards it. Despite the unease bubbling in my stomach, I purchased the doll and took it home. That night, as I sat in my living room with the doll perched on the mantel, I began to feel uneasy. It was as if those glassy eyes were following me, observing my every move. I tried to ignore it, but the feeling persisted. When I finally decided to go to bed, I placed the doll in the corner of the room, facing away from me. Sleep did not come easily. My dreams were filled with dark, shadowy figures and whispers I couldn't understand. I woke up in a cold sweat, heart pounding. The room was pitch black, but I felt an undeniable presence. Fumbling for the light switch, I finally managed to illuminate the room, and there it was. The doll had moved. It now sat on the dresser, facing me with those penetrating eyes. A chill ran down my spine. I told myself it must have been a trick of the mind, or perhaps I had moved it unconsciously. But deep down, I knew something was very wrong. The next few days were a blur of restless nights and growing paranoia. I tried to get rid of the doll, throwing it in the trash, but it always found its way back into the house. The doll's gaze became more intense, almost hypnotic. I felt it invading my thoughts, trying to control me. I could hear whispers, soft but persistent, urging me to succumb to its will. Desperation set in, and I decided to seek help. I found an old book on the occult in the library, hoping it would have some answers. As I flipped through the pages, I found a passage about possessed objects and how to break their hold. It required a ritual involving salt and fire performed at midnight. I gathered the necessary items and prepared myself for what was to come. At the stroke of midnight, I began the ritual. The air grew colder and the whispers intensified. I felt the doll's eyes boring into me, trying to disrupt my concentration. But I pushed through, determined to end this nightmare. As I completed the ritual, the doll's eyes seemed to glow, and a high-pitched scream filled the room. Then silence. I slumped to the floor, exhausted but relieved. It was over. I had broken the doll's hold and saved myself from its malevolent grip. Or so I thought. As I cleaned up the remnants of the ritual, I noticed something odd. In the mirror, my reflection was slightly delayed, moving a fraction of a second after I did. And those eyes? They weren't mine. They were the doll's. The realization hit me like a freight train. I hadn't destroyed the doll's power. I had merely transferred it. The doll was now inside me. Chapter Part 2, The Awakening. Days turned into weeks, and the unsettling feeling of being watched never left. The whispers had subsided, but they were replaced by a creeping sense of dread that gnawed at my sanity. I tried to go about my daily life, but it was impossible to ignore the changes. I felt disconnected from my own body, as if I were a puppet being controlled by an unseen force. I avoided mirrors whenever possible, but every now and then, I caught glimpses of those haunting eyes staring back at me. I knew I had to find a way to reverse what had happened, to reclaim my own soul. Desperation led me to consult with a local medium, a woman known for her expertise in the supernatural. Madame Zara's shop was filled with the smell of incense and the flickering light of candles. She listened intently as I recounted my story, her eyes narrowing in concentration. When I finished, she remained silent for a moment before speaking. "The doll's spirit has latched onto you, using your body as its vessel," she explained. "To break free, you must confront the spirit directly and banish it once and for all." Madame Zara provided me with a list of items needed for a final, more powerful ritual. She warned me that this would be dangerous, that the spirit would fight back with all its might. But I had no choice. I couldn't continue living like this. The night of the ritual, I gathered the items. A silver mirror, a circle of salt, and a black candle. I followed Zara's instructions meticulously, chanting the incantations she had given me. The air grew thick with tension, and the temperature dropped sharply. As I chanted, the room darkened, and the whispers returned, louder and more insistent. I felt a force pressing against me, trying to break my concentration. But I persisted, focusing all my will on the task at hand. Suddenly, the mirror in front of me began to ripple, as if it were made of water. In its depths, I saw a shadowy figure, its eyes glowing with malevolence. It lunged towards me, but I held my ground, repeating the incantation with renewed vigor. The spirit screamed in rage, the sound echoing through the room. I could feel its grip on me loosening, its power waning. With one final desperate push, I completed the ritual. The mirror shattered, and the room was filled with blinding light. When the light faded, I found myself lying on the floor, exhausted but alive. The whispers were gone, and I felt a profound sense of relief. I looked in the remnants of the mirror and saw my own eyes staring back at me, clear and free of the doll's influence. I had won, or so I thought. Weeks later, I was cleaning the attic when I found a small, dusty box. Inside was another doll, identical to the first, its eyes gleaming with a familiar, sinister light. A chill ran down my spine as I realized the truth. The doll's spirit hadn't been banished. It had merely found a new vessel, and it was waiting for me. On part 3, the final stand, the discovery of the second doll sent shivers down my spine. I realized I was dealing with something far more sinister and persistent than I had initially thought. The sense of dread returned, stronger than ever, and I knew I had to act quickly before the spirit could fully possess me. I contacted Madame Zara again, explaining the situation. Her voice was tense over the phone, and she agreed to come to my house to help me perform an even more powerful exorcism. This time, she would be there to guide me through the process and ensure no mistakes were made. Madame Zara arrived the next evening, bringing with her an array of ancient artifacts and protective charms. We set up a sacred space in my living room, placing the second doll at the center of a complex pattern of salt and herbs. The atmosphere was charged with tension as Zara began to chant in a language I didn't understand. As the ritual progressed, the temperature in the room plummeted. The doll's eyes seemed to glow with a dark energy, and a low growl emanated from its porcelain lips. Zara's chanting grew louder, more forceful, and I joined in, repeating the incantation she had taught me. The air crackled with energy, and I felt the spirit's grip tightening around my mind. It was trying to fight back, to reclaim its hold on me, but I focused all my willpower on resisting, on pushing it out once and for all. The room shook as if an earthquake had struck, and I could see the spirit's form emerging from the doll, a swirling mass of darkness and malevolence. With one final, deafening shout, Zara and I completed the incantation. The spirit let out a horrifying scream, its form dissipating into the air like smoke. The doll's eyes dulled, and it collapsed lifelessly onto the floor. Silence fell over the room. I collapsed onto the couch, utterly drained but feeling a profound sense of relief. Madame Zara placed a hand on my shoulder, her face etched with exhaustion. "It's over," she said. "The spirit is gone for good this time." I thanked her profusely, grateful for her help. As she packed up her things and prepared to leave, she handed me a small, ornate box. "Keep this with you," she instructed. "It's a protective charm. It will ward off any lingering spirits." I nodded, clutching the box tightly. After Zara left, I spent the next few hours cleaning up the remnants of the ritual, finally feeling a sense of peace. I placed the box on my nightstand and crawled into bed, ready for a long, restful sleep. As I drifted off, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I told myself it was just my imagination, a leftover remnant of the night's events. But deep down, I knew better. In the dead of night, I awoke to a faint, chilling whisper. I turned on the light, my heart pounding. There on the dresser was the doll. Its eyes were as lifeless as before, but the protective charm box was open, and inside was a note written in a scrawling hand. It read, "You cannot escape." The realization hit me like a sledgehammer. The spirit had never intended to possess me completely. It had only wanted to make me believe I was free, to let my guard down. And now it was back, stronger than ever. I knew what I had to do. I couldn't face this alone. I packed a bag, grabbed the doll, and headed out into the night. There was only one place left to go, a secluded monastery I had read about, where ancient rituals were performed to banish the darkest of spirits. As I drove through the night, the doll's eyes seemed to glow faintly in the darkness, and the whispers began anew. This time I was prepared. I would fight this spirit to the end, and I would win. I had to. Part 4, The Ultimate Sacrifice. The journey to the monastery was long and arduous, filled with moments of doubt and fear. The doll's whispers grew louder, more insistent, but I steeled myself against them. I couldn't let the spirit win. The monastery was hidden deep in the mountains, a place of ancient power and solemn silence. When I arrived, the monks greeted me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. They had seen many come seeking refuge from dark forces, but my story seemed to unsettle even the most stoic among them. The head monk, an elderly man named Father Gabriel, listened intently as I recounted my tale. "We can help you," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "But you must be prepared for the cost. The spirit is deeply entrenched, and removing it will require a great sacrifice." I nodded, ready to do whatever it took. The monks led me to a sacred chamber deep within the monastery, its walls covered in ancient runes and symbols of protection. At the center of the room was an altar, upon which they placed the doll. Father Gabriel began the ritual, chanting in a language older than time itself. The air grew thick with energy, and I felt the spirit's rage building, its grip tightening around my mind. The monks formed a circle around me, their voices joining in the chant, creating a powerful barrier of light and sound. As the ritual reached its climax, the spirit emerged from the doll, a swirling vortex of darkness and malevolence. It lunged towards me, but the monk's chants held it at bay. Father Gabriel handed me a ceremonial dagger, its blade inscribed with runes of power. "You must sever the connection," he said. "Only then can the spirit be banished." With trembling hands, I took the dagger and stepped towards the altar. The spirit screamed, a sound that pierced my soul, but I steeled myself against it. I plunged the dagger into the doll, feeling a surge of energy as the runes activated, binding the spirit. The room shook, and the spirit let out a final, deafening scream before dissipating into nothingness. The doll's eyes dulled, and it collapsed into a heap of porcelain shards. I fell to my knees, utterly spent but free at last. The monks helped me to my feet, their faces filled with relief and reverence. Father Gabriel placed a hand on my shoulder, his eyes filled with wisdom and compassion. "You have done well," he said. "The spirit is gone and you are free." I thanked them, overwhelmed with gratitude. As I prepared to leave, Father Gabriel handed me a small ornate box. "Take this," he said. "It is a symbol of your strength and a reminder of your victory. It will protect you from any future darkness." I took the box, feeling a sense of closure and peace. The journey home was quiet and serene. The weight of the past finally lifted from my shoulders. I placed the box on my nightstand, a symbol of my triumph and a testament to my resilience. As the days turned into weeks, I finally began to feel normal again. The whispers were gone, and I could look in the mirror without fear. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, and I felt a profound sense of gratitude for the second chance I had been given. One evening, as I sat in my living room, I noticed something strange. The protective charm box was open, and inside was a note written in a familiar scrawling hand. It read, "This is not the end." A chill ran down my spine, but this time I was not afraid. I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew I had the strength to overcome them. The doll's spirit was gone, but the journey had taught me a valuable lesson. True strength comes not from the absence of fear, but from the courage to face it head on. And I was ready.